Hello, dear friends. I am now in Chernobyl, namely in the city of Pripyat in 2024. Today, I will show you an apartment where my grandmother lived after the evacuation of Pripyat on April 27, 1986. And she did not want to leave. She was hiding on purpose and she lived here for some time. Let's go show you this apartment. Now, only the military are allowed to live in Pripyat. We go up to the fourth floor of the house. Today, I have a story about how a grandmother was forgotten in one of the Pripyat apartments. During the evacuation, a grandmother was forgotten who could not call for help because of health problems. We learned this terrible story from a book about the Chernobyl disaster from the author and former resident of Pripyat. So, today we are going to tell you what really happened. In 1986, on the night of April 26, an accident with the release of radioactive materials occurred at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The results were catastrophic. Tons of radioactive material were released into the environment. More than 5,000 square kilometers of land became uninhabitable. Only animals remained on the vast territory. People had to be evacuated permanently. The radiation was simply off scale. Pripyat is a city located 2 kilometers from the nuclear power plant, which was fatal for the young atomic city because the city became contaminated with radiation. After the accident, the entire population of 50,000 people was simply evacuated in 3 hours. But in fact, the evacuation lasted several days, and if you take into account the forgotten people, it took about 2 months. And this is what happened to my grandmother Lida, whom I am telling you about, who was simply forgotten in a local Pripyat dormitory, and she did not want to leave her home. On the day of the evacuation of Pripyat, it was announced that people would be able to return home in 3 days. So many people left their dogs, cats, hamsters, fish, and parrots in their apartments. During these days, many people were preparing for the holidays, planning to have a barbecue, taking tents and guitars with them, but many people were in trouble and cried all the way. While the residents of Pripyat were boarding the evacuation buses, an old and sick grandmother was lying in one of the apartments. My grandmother was left alone. She could hear the stomping feet of her neighbors who were going to the buses en masse, the sounds of helicopters. One can only imagine how this grandmother felt. On the first night after the complete evacuation, the police usually went to the houses, checking the apartments, but they came to my grandmother's house only a couple of weeks later, and it was a terrible discovery for everyone. There was a note on the front door of the apartment left by my grandmother's relatives. It said, "We are leaving. Give my grandmother at least some water." B. The police immediately opened the apartment and found a woman who was no longer alive. The sight was eerie, and it is especially unclear what motivated the relatives who did this. Here is the same apartment. It is now clear that the interior of this apartment is not very revealing, but this is where the grandmother lived. After this incident, the police and the military opened all the doors, let out still alive dogs and cats to look for other people and found them, but not always alive.
People hid in cellars and sheds and went to the forests. After evacuation, many people returned home to the zone using forest guerrilla trails. Today, we stalkers use these paths. 38 years after the events in the exclusion zone, we can say that it was the residents of the Chernobyl zone who became the first stalkers. But they made it home. We are just traveling. Friends, this is what an apartment looks like in 2024 in the city of Pripyat. Friends, here is also a room that my wife and I restored on our own during an illegal trip to Chernobyl before the war. The zone contains a number of abandoned towns and villages whose current population is made up of people who either refused to evacuate the area or secretly resettled in the relatively unprotected region after it was cordoned off. The majority of the Samersli are elderly people who made their home in the area prior to the 1986 Chernobyl disaster, although some are disaffected settlers from outside the region. When the population was evacuated, they were initially told they could return in a few days, and many faced discrimination in areas of government resettlement. As of 2009, there are thought to be fewer than 400 remaining Samersli of an earlier clarification needed population estimated at over 10,000.
А така сама ж хата, так?
У її, бачите, мостки там, а ми ж якраз через дух не могли покрасити нічого.
Аби ми могли до вас колись прийти та покрасити, що вам треба, хоч внутрі. Покрасити вікна, там забор чи що треба.
Нема дітки.
А чого ні, ми
Краски, це ж через ця.
Так ми вам принесемо краску.
Ай, важко нести, важко дітки.
Та ми ж молоді, нам не важко.
Важко нести, дітки. Це так його баба
Оду
одягала.
бачите, може до дівки є, розумієте, є.
О, дітки. Ото це моя, мого внучка, це доця, одного, бачите.
Це вже правильно.
Правнучка, правнучка.
А це ж тепер Моля приїхала її.
Ні, давно вже, а ти вже
Ого, карапуз який.
фотографувала дитко.
А ну,
Карапуз. У нас теж є
синові.
а це синові.
Дітки теж, бачите, ото, що порошку у бабі. О. І чорний, чи білий, чи ти хочеш, бо вам треба деколи.
Ні, додивися ціле, казали, таблетки.
Ревматин, а?
Раунатин.
Так я казала. Оце я і дітки п'ю, бо ті для серця мені вредять, коптопрес.
Оце вся ваша аптечка, так?
Ага.
О, таке там є панкреатин, це тут щось казали.
О,
Оце в мене теж таке є, покажу.
о.
Панкреатин, гугіда,
Оце
Бідненько,
такі
ну, добре, я поняла.
далеко не ховаю його. О, а це моя одного невістка, а це доня моя,
А похоже.
а це сестри двоюродні.
Ага.
Оце о. Оце її чоловік.
В Києві,
це
да,
є.
живуть?
О, а це їхній синок, це вони на Донбасі вони живуть.
Мгм.
А це мій синок, а це
Мгм.
невістка. О.
Похоже, дочка.
І це такі дітки.
А це син, так?
Ні, це вже зять наш.
А, зять.
Зять вже, це,
Оця дочка. Вроді, так? Чи ні?
оце дочка
Ага.
моя. А це внучка моя, це.
І всі на вас похожі, особливо внучка, диви.
Да.
Похоже, да. Щоки ваші точно. І глаза, щоки.
Поспитайтеся і бабушки, одного бачите.
Ух ти, яка краса.
Де? О, це що запіканка якась, чи що це таке?
Поспитаєте, буде вкусно, то будете їсти.
Баби Гани.
Ладочки,
Фух, так.
одного є все, одно картопельки. Я вам потрошку положите.
Чуть-чуть, так, положіть
Бо ми вже поїли,
Я знаю, що ви поїли.
але у вас не їли.
А
Да,
ви
вас
от іменно, а за що ж є не спячив, є з плити, а в мене спячився. Яка картопля вкусна з печі. Да він трошки там, ну, поспитайте, я не хочу, щоб воно розтівало.
Бабушка Ганя, а бабушка Марія.
Да.
Вона дома?
Ну, дома вона буде
зайдемо.
Я вам і вина налила пляшку. Да.
Ні, вино не треба нам. Чи ви нам з собою його хочете дати?
З вами. с собой хотела. И вам меду баночку дам. По мне столько навозили меду.
Кого?
Меду.
У нас вдома стоїть 5
Ми
банок.
ж в Києві живемо.
А
у
ми
нас
з
є.
рюкзаками
Спасибо.
пішки ми не будемо брати.
Ой,
Бо ми
є.
ж його не дотащимо.
Так, я пойду. Миша,
А у вас ще й пічка вона працює. А я думаю, що у вас тепло так в хаті, бо бабушки сьогодні холодно так.
Доня моя доглянь. Донька моя. Уже картопельки я вам по одной ложечке всього укину. Я знаю,
Може
що
допомогти щось вам?
Я
Вам
ж-
води треба принести?
Чого?
Води хоч принести треба?
не треба.